Wednesdays are the second Thursday or the third?
Third.
Hi, welcome to the Money Smart for Small Business series. We're in November, and this month's topic is tax planning and reporting. So we hope that you're watching live. We actually had quite a few registrations, and obviously there's not that many people in the room, so maybe you're watching from home. We have one more class to fill out our 13-part series for Money Smart for Small Business. And there was a glitch on the date. We actually put it on the wrong date in Eventbrite, and it went out that way. So the actual date is December 14th. It's been corrected on the calendars, and people who had already registered have been notified. So it's always the third Thursday of the month. And we'll wrap up our 13-part series on December 14th with the topic Selling Your Business and Succession Planning. So we hope that you'll join us then. This is Heather Johnson with New Mexico Bank and Trust. They're our sponsor for this series. Heather is our leader and commander, teaches us all this great stuff, and today's topic is really important and very timely given that it's the end of the year, almost the end of the year, so thank you.
Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming today. I do want to state, while I am teaching the class, I'm in no way a tax preparer, and I don't know any specifics regarding taxes. But what we're going to be covering today is sort of some timing and some things you should be aware of and resources you can go to look for more information on the topic. It's a lunch and learn, so feel free to enjoy yourselves if you need to. There's restrooms down the hallway. But I'd like to go ahead and start by going around the room and sort of introducing yourself and why you're here today and what you hope to learn. So, Misty, would you start us?
Yeah, I'm Misty Witt. I'm the Assistant Director here at the Bioscience Center. We're here to hopefully work with Heather and help with education on different aspects of business.
And my name is Alexis Pachicha. I work with Edward Jones, and I'm actually here to learn more about it so that I can be able to talk to my clients more about it. So just give them some info.
Hey.
Hello, I'm Beth Spencer. I've been running my own business for a little more than a year now, and I just need to learn a little more about taxes. I've been keeping up with it using QuickBooks Self-Employed, and that's been really helpful, but I just need to know the basics, make sure I don't end up in jail. I don't want to overlook anything.
Yeah. You want to go ahead?
Okay, yes. Ramon and I'm with Edward Jones as well. I work in the same office as Alexis. Same thing, I have 2 or 3 clients who are talking about trying to start their small business, and they come to me like I have an idea of what I'm doing to help them get started. So that's why I'm here to try to get an idea of what to do to help them get started. So.
That's awesome. I'm Kimberly. I'm the marrying minister. I marry couples by performing pop-up weddings and epic elopements. And I need all the education on taxes so I can set myself up better in my business.
Thank you. You want to?
Sure, Lisa Adkins. I run Fat Pipe BBQ in the Bioscience Center. I also own my own software development company called Ingenuity Software Labs. All of this training is amazing, and I've been to every single one. And we're going to change it up a little bit next year and give you guys even more hands-on training. So keep an eye on what we plan on doing next year.
I'm Sonia. Hello.
Hi. So today we're going to be talking about federal, state, and local tax reporting, requirements for small business and its owners, and hopefully help you establish a plan on how to pay for them, to account and pay for them. We're also going to identify methods for researching the local, municipal, and county reporting licenses requirements for small businesses. So we talked a little bit about what you hope to learn today. So the most important thing about managing your tax obligations is get informed. Sounds like over the last year you've been doing a lot of that, and this is part of the process, so I'm glad you came. You need to plan so that you are prepared for when your taxes come, and what you should be looking for. So the big one that he knows is income tax. And depending on how your company is set up, depends on how you file your income tax. There's different requirements for sole proprietorships, S-corps, C-corps, limited liability companies. So And when you're determining how you want to set up your business, that should be part of what you're looking at, is how you're going to be paying your taxes. So something to consider. There's also self-employment tax, state income taxes, employment taxes. If you're a business that has employees, it's important that you're going to be paying taxes on them as well. Sales tax, or gross receipts tax as it's called in New Mexico. And then any local taxes, which might be permitting from the city to have your business license. If you have something specific like food, you might need to get a food permit in order to do that. So we'll be talking a little bit about that too. So we'll start with the big one and work our way down. Income tax. So in order to file income tax, it's important too that you get a tax ID number. You can do that through going out to the IRS on their website and getting your employee identification number. So that way they know what type of business you are and how you'll be filing your taxes. And then they can also verify that you have paid your taxes. So a sole proprietor typically files on their personal tax return, or a Form 1040, just like what an individual would file. It's filed through a Schedule C or a Schedule C-EZ, depending on how much income there is. Whoops. You're going to be filing, it's kind of like just a mini corporate tax form where you take your income and your expenses and it's just added to your personal income. Partnerships can file on personal, but typically they file a separate form called a 1065. And then what they do is they give each of the owners of the partnership a Schedule K1. And so the owners of the partnership then file on their personal 1040 tax return. An S-Corp is similar in that they pass the income through to the owners of the company and it's filed on their personal 1040. And they also file a separate form called an 1120S for the corporation. Lastly, a C corporation is the only company where you will file entirely a separate tax return. It does not follow through to the owners who own the company. It pays taxes as an entity of itself. And then if the owners take any distributions or dividends to the stockholders, they have to pay that on their tax return. So, limited liability companies, the IRS does not recognize them as sort of a separate entity, so it depends. It could file as a corporation, a partnership, or a sole proprietorship. So you should talk to your accountant about how to set that up appropriately from the get-go. So it's important to know some resources that you can go to. You can go to irs.gov and search. They have a great search tool that says, I want to file as an S corporation. And it'll pull up all of the different forms that you need to. Or I need to know how to file employee taxes. And so the website itself can be a good resource. There's also phone numbers you can call to contact the IRS and ask questions. And always a good idea to have an advisor, a bookkeeper, or an accountant that you can go to as well to ask these questions to make sure you're filing the right forms when. So just to kind of give you some ideas about what those are. So if you have employees, you are responsible for a few things. There are some taxes that the employee pays that you have to then forward on to the government. There are some taxes you pay on behalf of your employees as the business owner. So it's important to know what those are and when you have to file them. This is also something if you do a payroll system, potentially through QuickBooks or ADP or Intuit or one of those, that they can help guide you through and file all of these for you. But you should still know what they are so that in case whoever you hire to do it for you doesn't do it, you know enough to know, hey, this should have been happening, and verify what's going on. So some of these are your employer's annual federal unemployment tax return, or 940. As an employer, you have to file an employment tax insurance, and that's a separate form that goes out. And there's also a quarterly federal tax return, or 941, and that's the one that shows all of what your employees' deductions are and your check to go along to pay those from your employees. So how do you know what to withhold from your employees? You need a W-4 or an employee withholding form, and that'll tell you how many exemptions they have or how much they want you to take out from each paycheck. And you'll input all of that information when you're calculating their taxes. You also send out and are responsible for sending out a W-2 form at the end of the year that shows what your employees made during that year and how much they paid in taxes. And then if you have a contract employee, you're responsible for filing a 1099 miscellaneous. And that goes out the end of January, which shows if it's over $600, how much that contract employee made while they worked for you. You guys have any questions about employer or what you're responsible for as owning a business? It's a lot of numbers and a lot of forms.
One question,
Yeah.
on the 940 and the 941,
Yep.
are those required no matter how it's set up
Mm-hmm.
as sole proprietor?
As long as you have employees.
Awesome,
That's the trigger for that.
okay.
If you're the only employee, then you don't worry about those. There's different forms you fill out in that case.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
So I have a question. Does that computer program you have for your bookkeeping system tell you this stuff?
Well, I haven't paid it yet, so it directs me to like the electronic tax processing system, but it does track, like it says this month I should have paid this. But I'm having issues because I have only lived in New Mexico for like less than a year, so I haven't done my income taxes. That's what someone from Liberty Tax told me. That's why when I go to the website to pay, like there's an issue and it won't. It's so bizarre. I just want to give them my money. Like, so why is it so hard? But maybe we'll figure it out. But it's really good. It's $12 a month. It pays for itself because of the hassle-free factor.
You said that was QuickBooks?
Yes, I mean, it's like it tracks where my mileage. I've already saved, deducted about $1,000, you know, that I won't have to pay in taxes from all my business trips.
Awesome.
It's very cool.
Do you recommend that one, Misty, QuickBooks?
Yeah, most people now are going to something like that. There's, of course, desktop and online. I'm pretty sure you're probably using the online version, it sounds like.
I am the
Yeah.
self-employed. I know there are lots of different
There are
versions.
different versions, but yeah, there's usually a good fit somewhere with QuickBooks in there. So.
So after you've paid your federal, there's the state and local taxes too. New Mexico does have a state income tax for individuals and businesses. So you do need to look into that. Permits, local jurisdictions can require some special permits. So the one that popped in my head was a construction permit. If you're going to be doing any type of remodel on your business building, or even if you don't own the building but you're doing some sort of improvement, you need a permit for that. Depending on what your business is, you need a permit for the business, a business license, which goes into business licenses, a fictitious business name permit, which is when you're Heather Johnson doing business as blah, blah, blah. That's what a fictitious business name permit is. And that also protects you too from somebody else coming in and using that same name. And then state sales tax, or in New Mexico, a gross receipts tax. So if you sell retail products, you need to collect the tax from your customers and then you pay it on to the state, depending on what it is you do. But it's important to talk with the New Mexico State Department as far as filing that. And it can be done online. So your form of business determines on how you pay income taxes and pay as you go. So if you anticipate that you are going to, and again, talk with your accountant, but if you anticipate you're going to owe more than $1,000 when you file your return at the end of the year, then you need to look at doing quarterly estimated taxes, where you would pay on the 15th of April, June, September, and January. And that's your estimated tax payments for the year. So if you were paying this year, it would be your 16 we're in 17. Your 17 payments that then when you file your taxes April 15th would show what you've been paying quarterly.
And so what's the intent of doing that? Quarterly versus once a year?
If you're gonna end up owing substantially at the end of the year,
Okay.
rather than
Spread the pain out.
yeah. And also so you don't avoid any late fees, things of that nature. If you're filing as a C Corp, again, if you're going to be owing at the end of the year, you might want to do that quarterly. And of course, there's another form for that called the 1040-ES for your estimated payments. A lot of states require quarterly payments as well to go along with your federal. Is everybody familiar with what the difference is between a fiscal year and a calendar year?
Not really. I mean, you hear it all the time when somebody's having a yearly sale, but
So your business, most businesses run their business year from January 1st to December 31st of each year. However, some businesses, depending on if they started on September 1st, they might decide that their fiscal year is going to be September 1 to August 30 of every year. And that's okay, but you need to let the government know what your fiscal year is going to be. So your fiscal year,
is there an advantage to one or the other?
you would need to talk with a lawyer or an accountant to why you would want to set it up that way. But it does change your reporting requirements if you have a different fiscal year end from December 31st.
Okay.
The government kind of assumes everybody's working on the same calendar.
Okay.
You don't have to, but you might have different reporting requirements. So it is important never to use your payroll taxes for working capital during cash flow stretch as a cash flow shortfall. So you collect money from your employees to cover the taxes. It should be kept in a separate account as best before it gets shipped off to the government when you file quarterly. Because it is important that you do not use that money. Because if you are short, you're going to be the one who gets in trouble for not paying. So if you can, keep your taxes in a separate account to help you do that. So how do you know? So if you're using something like QuickBooks, hopefully you know how much that is, when and what. Hopefully today will kind of give you some estimates of the when to know what you should be doing and how much you need at that point. So save that money for taxes. If you're paying gross receipts monthly or quarterly, again, set it aside as you're collecting that so you have it when it's due. You can use a separate account in order to do that. But your bookkeeping system should be telling you how much you should be setting aside. So it's really important to have something that you can use to know what those deductions are for your bookkeeping. So there's some different companies out there that do payroll, like I mentioned, ADP, QuickBooks, Intuit. It just depends on how many employees you have as to what might be the best fit. Some banks even have an online system through your bank account that can help you do some of the payroll, provide a payroll service for you. So what else does an accounting system do? It helps you know what your business expenses are throughout the year. Helps you keep track of those on a regular basis so you know what to put on your taxes. It can spit out nice little reports for you on a monthly basis to tell you where you're at so that things don't come as a surprise at the end of the year. And you kind of know as you go along what you're doing.
Does QuickBooks give you reports?
Mm-hmm.
You can filter and see, how profitable you were a certain month or several months. It's really nice. I'll show you the app on my phone. It's super easy. I've never even had to Google anything. It's very intuitive. I love it.
Wow.
Of course, always talk with your tax consultant to know what is, if you have questions about is it truly a business expense or not, to make sure you're doing those the right way. Also, in case you're ever audited, you want some good records to go back and verify what those were. So you can use an accountant, but you don't have to. You can do it yourself, which is what the IRS website is trying to help people do, is do it on their own. You don't have to hire an accountant. You can call and ask questions. Go to the website, check it out. Accountant services, of course, you can hire a bookkeeper, depending on the size of your company, or you could hire a full CPA, depending on what your needs are. So where to find a qualified business accountant? You can check online, read reviews just like anything else, get good referrals, meet with them, interview them just like you would interview somebody else. This is going to be somebody very important to your business. So if you don't have a good working relationship, it could be detrimental. Other things or reasons you might want to get or talk to your accountant about is business consulting, to know how to grow your business. Maybe you're looking at expanding, taking on new employees. They might be able to provide some advice about whether or not that's a good idea. Personal finance advice about taking distributions, or how to utilize, how to do different things. Informational organizational structures. Maybe you're currently one structure and you want to change to another structure. They can provide that information on what and how to do it. Financing information. They might be able to tell you information about getting a loan and certainly help you prepare your statements to give to the bank so that they're clean. Audits. If you are ever audited, an accountant can help you go through the process. And then as your company grows, there's different levels of financial reporting that accountants can provide to you. There's the basics, which is just compiled. So, and that's kind of when you do QuickBooks and you push out an income statement, that's just a compiled statement of what you have put into QuickBooks. As your company gets bigger, a bank or you might require reviewed statements, which means then that the accountant's done a little bit more due diligence than just looking at the QuickBooks statement. They've actually kind of gone in and taken a further deep dive into your books. And then the highest quality is audited. And this will become especially important next week as we talk about selling your business, because this means that the accountant has gone in and actually done a full audit into your books. They've reviewed all the expenses, all of the income, and verified everything be true and accurate. And they have to provide a report, and there's certain standards about that. Banks often require, depending on the size of your loan and the size of your business, different levels of financial reporting for your loan to make sure that we have the most accurate information. So, and of course, as you go from each level, it gets more and more expensive. So, something to take into consideration. So, important information. We're actually kind of moving through this. You guys have some questions? Taxes are kind of dry, but they're important. Okay, so 5 key points to remember. Get good advice, get qualified advice. Learn your business tax liability, income, employment, self-employment, sales, social. Set money aside to cover your taxes, and don't commingle your funds. So don't use your tax money for working capital for your business. Have an accounting system in place to track your income and expenses so that at the end of the year it makes things a little bit easier. And ask an accountant for help if you need to. So what questions do you guys have?
So I would work with obviously the sales tax. That's what I need to pay, and then income tax, right?
Right.
Around April is when that's due.
Right.
And
you're gonna file on your personal tax return.
Okay. Local taxes, are those?
That would be mostly your business license.
Yes.
And if you have any property for your business, you might need to pay property taxes on your business property.
So basically income, self-employment, and sales or gross receipt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, do either of you know a good approximate percentage rate of what one should set aside in a special account just to pay taxes out of a small business?
It varies, it's
It-
hard to.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on what your sales are and what.
Or what would be the minimal one should try to go for to keep out of trouble with the IRS? Let's say.
Depending on the type of your company, I mean, you can look up, of course, different tax rates on like irs.gov or the state websites, depending on what type of entity you are. And it's, it could be a good idea, depending on whatever percentage they are for your business, to maybe at least hold a portion of that. I know personally, like for my sales tax, I hold 100% of everything I collect for sales tax to pay it. I mean, I don't.
Right.
So, it depends on the type of tax, and it depends on the type of business and what your tax rate is, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That
Will
would
they
be a
tell
good
us what our
question
tax rate is?
To ask.
The IRS?
Well, there's like a fancy chart
Yeah.
Oh,
that says if your income is
Yeah.
between X and Y, this is your estimated tax
okay,
bracket.
okay.
And if you're filing as an individual, you look at the individual and you figure, if I have W-2 wages and then I have income from my business, and if you have somebody else, this might be your tax bracket, and then you can kind of estimate
Yeah.
from there.
Okay, because I have a friend who is a mobile dog groomer, and she told me months ago that she saves 20% of her earnings tax money. I'm not sure, but she always has to pay the IRS at the end of the year, and I'm like 20%, and she still owes them. So how much, is required to set aside for taxes? It's like, whoa.
Depends on her income
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
and what tax bracket she falls under.
And she might want to talk to an accountant about paying quarterly through the year
Yeah.
rather than paying a big check at the end of the year to avoid that.
Yeah, if that comes up, I'll mention it to her,
Mm-hmm.
because that just seems so odd to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty standard number. I mean, even if retirement plans, most of the time, if they're pre-tax deductions, they're gonna, when you withdraw, it's gonna be 20%. They're automatically gonna hold it. So that 20% is not that crazy of a number. I think it's pretty standard, but.
Mm-hmm. And as a self-employed person too, you need to still pay in for your Medicare and your Social Security taxes. So that's something you have to file as well. Even if you're self-employed, so you still have to pitch in for those.
Okay.
Which I'm assuming is part of what QuickBooks is helping you.
I hope so. Yeah. Also, what is the website to pay our gross receipt taxes? Is that, I forget, I have it bookmarked, but what is the name of that one?
New Mexico tap.
Is that it? New Mexico TAP?
Tap, that's right, yeah. Sounds familiar.
Sonia, do you have any questions?
Hold on, let me look at my notes. I don't think so. I think I basically wanted to hear, make sure I've got everything, that I'm doing everything right. I think I am. I'm covering all the bases. So I don't think I have any questions.
I think today, like I said, the biggest takeaway is just to have some idea around what you need to pay and sort of when. You need to pay your employee taxes quarterly. You pay your income taxes at least annually and potentially make quarterly payments depending on your tax situation. And to know that unless you're a C Corp, everything flows through a personal tax return. And C Corps are separate.
C Corp is an LLC. That's-
No.
C Corp is big corporation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And potentially this could all change, depending on what happens in Washington. So, always stay up to date.
But if let's say legislators change something and it goes on the books December 1st, does that for the whole year change everything that everybody's been doing all year long?
Typically when they do stuff, they do it for the next
For
year.
January.
Yeah.
So that'd be 2018, you don't have to worry about that until next year, but for 2017, we think,
Right, there shouldn't be,
Things-
and everything is set for 17.
okay.
Any changes going forward would be for 18 or after. And that's another nice thing about having either a service or an accountant, because if and when the law changes, they can let you know what those changes are. And that's kind of their job, to stay up to date on that information. So you don't have to. You can run your business.
It's just one of those things you really don't want to mess up, because you don't want to have a problem with the IRS.
Mm-hmm. So I hope you've learned about managing your tax obligations. Typical tax businesses pay income, self-employment, sales, unemployment, and local taxes, and the forms and processes used to pay the business taxes. So we kind of talked about the forms and the processes. Most of it can be paid and filed all online now through different systems. So you don't have to print and mail everything. And that's all I have for today.
Thank you.
Well,
Uh-huh.
the hood is
Good info.
swimming.
I know. As I'm rattling off all these forms, I'm like, okay, well, we have the 1040, the Schedule C.
I
C
have
or
one more
CEZ?
question. It's sort of basic. Like, so QuickBooks is, when you go to pay, you can pay through QuickBooks. It takes me to electronic federal tax payment system, which is going to U.S. Department of Treasury, but that's not going to be my state taxes, right?
Mm-mm.
Yeah. So I wonder what taxes they're saying I need to pay, or QuickBooks is like collecting, or deducting and telling me to set aside. I don't. What taxes are going or assigned to Department of Treasury?
Federal.
Federal?
Your federal.
Yeah, whenever you
I
get
put
your
one in my
refund
first.
check, it's from the Department of Treasury of the United States. It's not from the IRS. The IRS is just an agency that sucks the blood out of it.
Is this the first year you're doing your taxes?
Yes.
Okay.
I haven't been in business very long.
All right.
What do you do?
I make little bags and buttons and.
She makes super adorable stuff from cat pictures. And
Yeah,
Awesome.
I draw stuff and put it on things.
Oh,
beautiful.
Thank
cool.
you.
It's beautiful.
That's awesome.
So for the state gross receipts tax, income tax, which is filed at the end of the year on your New Mexico PIT, and then unemployment insurance, which is part of, and workman's comp, are the ones you need to worry about with New Mexico State.
Okay. I don't have any employees.
So then,
So she's sole proprietor. Does she have to pay all those for herself to the state of New Mexico?
it would just be filed through her New Mexico income tax at the end of the year.
I don't know how to pay anything until I do those. I don't know if it'll let me, because we tried to set up an account through TAP and it would not recognize me. I'm just gonna have to call them and sort it out. And hopefully they'll take my money.
Always your best bet is just to call and ask the questions.
I heard that or if you call the IRS, it's easy to get somebody and they're usually helpful.
Mm-hmm.
State of New Mexico's not so nice.
More helpful.
No.
I agree.
State of Mexico's not quite as eager to take your money.
No, they're not.
Right.
Which is why we have a deficit.
Wow.
All right, well, thank you.
That's it.
Awesome.